Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about point of view and context. All right, so let's start with the idea that remember that we're looking at sources. We try to figure out who made it, what do we know about the creator, all these kinds of things, and we're trying to get to the a sense of reliability. Is this source somewhat reliable, or totally unreliable? Understanding, of course, that everybody has some kind of bias in when they're doing their sourcing. But ultimately, we need to understand that everybody has a certain frame of reference, a certain point of view that they look at history about. And a point of view is an opinion about something or how someone views the world. And yet, most of us kind of grow up with getting singular points of view with certain types of history. And what we want to do is get as many points of views as possible. And then that paints a greater picture, which otherwise is called context. There's a famous cartoon where the idea of point of view is if you put a bunch of doctors into an office with an elephant and they're all blindfolded, they'd all have a different idea of what that elephant is. Oh, on the tail, it's a rope. Oh, up against the body, it's a wall. Oh, the leg, it's a tree. Oh, the trunk, it's a snake. Oh, the tusk, it's a spear. Oh, the ears, it's a fan. The reality is, from their all points of view, that's what it seems like that thing is. The reality is it's an elephant, and if you take off the blindfold, they'll know it's an elephant. But from where the doctors are standing, it could be something else entirely. All right, so let's relate this to history. Let's just say you're trying to get an understanding of what Los Angeles was like in the 1980s when you had the cocaine epidemic and then a lot of you know the Bloods and the Crips in LA. And somebody says, "Well, what you should do is watch the movie Colors, which comes out in about 1984." Understand that when that one source comes out, that there's a whole lot of different points of view about the source. So, like from a point of view of law enforcement, they said, "Oh, this glorifies gang violence and actually is going to cause racial rioting, that kind of thing," and it never did. Gang members actually came out and said, "Well, wait, this is actually the first somewhat realistic portrayal of gang communities in Los Angeles." Then you have the black community that wasn't a member of gangs. The majority of the black community come out and saying this is all focused on negativity and a negative portrayal of who we are as people. Feminist organizations also jumped in and said, well, look, urban women really aren't portrayed at all in this movie. So, it doesn't really portray what's going on. And then community activists actually jump in and say, well, the real reasons are kind of portrayed in the movie. Government policies are bad, poverty is rampant, there's a lack of family, and it actually shows real reasons why people join gangs. So you have all these points of view, and then you have, of course, the people that went to watch the movie and their point of view. Oh, was it even good? Okay. So what you have here is one point of view, meaning one source, and multiple points of views looking at that source and commenting about that source. And you can use all of this, the movie and the points of view, to start getting a picture of what it's like in South Central Los Angeles. But then you even need to go farther. All right. What if we start looking at other sources? So if we look at autobiographies like Monster Cody Scott, interviews with members of gangs, former members of gangs, current former police, victims of gangs, family members, activists, politicians. We look at data. Okay, there's a photographer that just followed around gang members and police officers and took pictures of what life was like. DJ Quick makes a kind of a humorous, more a little goofy version of what life was like in South Central Los Angeles. And then you take all of this together and you get a better picture, a better frame about what life is like in the 1980s, with the understanding that all these things have different points of view and people will comment on them in different points of view. Okay. What you're trying to do is achieve a deeper understanding of what happened. It doesn't mean you have to like it or agree with it or anything like that, but we're trying to understand what actually happened. And when we get to that, then we get to the context. These are the details and facts that surround a particular event. I want to know as much context about an event as possible so I get different points of view. It paints a greater picture about what is actually going on. When did something happen? Where does it happen? What led to it? And why did it actually happen when and where it actually took place? Okay. So then we'd ask these questions about, okay, what's the context of here? Well, we know it's Los Angeles in the 1980s. We know that drug epidemics created a rise in gangs and bad policies and and issues with the police and poverty and all this. Okay. And then, of course, then you start analyzing, how did we make it better? Or then in terms of history, why did things happen afterwards? And now, South Central Los Angeles in the 80s is a complex event, but we got to understand that context exists and points of view exist everywhere. All right. And remember that different groups of people are going to see things differently than other groups of people. So we take an event like the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki that ends World War II. Most people will look at this event and say it's a fairly simple event. It ended World War II and it started like the nuclear age. So this, like, when did it happen? August of 1945. Where did it happen? Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. But this part, what led to it, could be way, way more complex. Like, what led to it? Well, um, let's see, we got German scientists that came over and helped us develop it. We wanted to show off to the Soviets. We wanted to end the war. We wanted to save American lives. We wanted to prove a point to the rest of the world. And so we start getting into, wait, there's actually a lot to deciding to drop this bomb. Why did it happen? When and where it took place? That's a really good question. Why was it Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Why wasn't it Tokyo? Wasn't it Kyoto? Why didn't we use it against Germany, months earlier? And all these questions. So you start investigating different points of view, and you will learn more about what was actually happening in the United States and the building of the bomb and the Manhattan Project, what was going on in Japan and the Soviet Union. Okay, so context comes with points of view. And of course, we go back to the idea that groups of people start seeing things differently than other groups of people. And then suddenly those groups of people all start getting together and you start getting an identity group. And then context starts, like, points of view end up not just being from a single individual, but large groups of people. And we see this a lot with different identity groups, basis on race and ethnicity and gender and sex, sexual orientation, economic class, religion, age, disability, things like citizenship, tribe, body size and type. All these people end up, congregating often together, because when you're with people that think like you do, you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable and familiar, and your opinions are being like, oh yeah, I agree with you. I acknowledge you. So, but in history and world history, we're going to narrow this list down. You're not going to have to know all of it. We'll probably discuss some of these things, but I want to focus on 6 different identity groups that are really super important to history. Okay, and just remember that, like, people like to hang out with other people that are like them. And it's just not like often people will sit there and say, just like, well, you like your favorite movie or sports team. No, it's just like that have fundamental principles that are like them. So we're going to narrow this down to race, ethnicity, gender, economic class, religion, and nationality. And you're going to talk about these throughout the semester. Race is simply a group of people with similar physical characteristics. That's it. Okay. Um, uh, Racial groups are, traditionally people think things like black and white and brown and that kind of thing. But we also have race in terms of within racial groups too, because sometimes, how dark or light skin color is going to impact the treatment of certain groups throughout history. Okay. Ethnicity is a huge one. A group of people that has a common cultural background. This starts talking about, like, what tribe you're a part of, what part of what region of the world you're from, what's the common culture and background. Ethnicity is huge when we're talking about history, because when you get to people that have a common culture or background, it's super powerful in keeping those people together. Gender is the cultural and biological roles of males and females in history. If the question is, are males and females biologically different? The answer needs to be, because it is true, yes, they actually have different traits and they have, different makeups. Um, Males tend to be more aggressive, males take more risk, females tend to be more organized, females tend to be more forward thinking. That should not be controversial, but understand that the culture is just as important, if not more so, because a lot of the culture starts to develop what it means to be a certain gender. And throughout history, that has shifted and changed a lot. And we're going to be taking a look at that. Economic class is pretty simple. It's wealth and social power you have your within society. This is where you get low, middle, and upper class kind of things. Lower class often means more poor. Middle class means you're pretty standard average, and then upper class meaning you're more wealthy. And throughout history, that has shifted and changed what it means to be poor and middle and wealthy. Okay. Religion is extremely powerful. Religion is the idea, the spirituality, the religion, the beliefs about the universe, how it's made up, that kind of thing. We're going to be looking at the major religions of the world, but also how religion has positively and negatively impacted history overall. And finally, nationality is extremely powerful as well. It is the country you are from or that you are in, that you see yourself as part of an actual physical defined border with government and people. That's the country you are from or the country you are in, and how kind of complex that is. So race, ethnicity, gender, economic class, religion, and nationality are going to be your 6 social identity groups we're going to look at. And when all these groups come together, their points of view start to become the same, and they start to develop a similar feelings about certain events and how they feel about historical and social issues. But the more points of view you get, as many groups as you can, the greater the context, and then the greater the understanding of overall history. History becomes clearer with the more points of view you get. You don't have to agree with those points of view, but you have to acknowledge that they happen, because every historical event happened because of other events, and more points of view can show you that. And every historical event happened because of other events, and every historical event has always led to other events. The story of history never, ever, ever ends.